Let me start off by posing a question on the FMCG front, right? So FMCGs are subject to a really complex market structure, right? So things like consumption patterns that vary from staples versus discretionary spending. So in addition to having a really complex supply chain on one end, to looking at really the market at the other end, and not to mention that during something like a pandemic, I'm sure there is a lot of changes in terms of what gets truly consumed. What is really a need or a necessity versus what is really a luxury? What is discretionary? And this is also changing thanks to digitization, right? So the amount of effort you will put into consuming something, if it's easily available versus if you have to go somewhere to consume it, all of this is different. First of all, do you feel like, given the complex landscape you're in, that you have enough data to understand and manage these complexities towards smarter decision making, right? I mean, and is AI basically there in the front of being able to take in all this data and take in all these complexities? And when I say complexities, I mean it both in both ends, right? One is consumer and customer demand. What is a target audience versus what is a consumption audience? You know, that kind of hierarchy is there. What is discretionary, what is staple? And then there is the other end, right, which is the supply chain. And what about the bullwhip effect? What about this effects where the demand propagates, and then you're having so many layers between you and the producer and you and the consumer. Given that, do you have the data, and where is AI in terms of helping you navigate this space? Perhaps we could start with Mr. Sudhakar from CavinKare.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Nandan. Interesting question you ask. On one perspective, you're asking about the data, the lineage of data and the availability of data. And on the other side, you're asking about AI. How does that play a role there? So if I have to answer, we have multiple systems in CavinKare, right? We have an enterprise system and we have a distributed management system or a DMS system, and we work on a typical distributor model. So that means we pretty much have primary data and what we sell it to the distributors, the distributed data. What we lack is, of course, we can also track the sales which goes to the retail outlets, but we cannot track the consumer data, the actual consumer data. We are not yet in B2C. We've started the e-commerce channel, but it's very nascent. It's just launched recently. Having said that, identifying consumption patterns, how we look at it, what is happening in a specific region at specific outlet level, right? We have data to a certain extent over there. But again, we cannot correlate that to a consumption pattern. We noticed slight shift during the first wave of COVID, where some of our products which were categorized as essential products were picking up sales. We also had health and hygiene, which caught up pretty well during the first phase of COVID, and slowly it started to die out. And our personal care division started out. CavinKare is a very diversified business, right? We have professional care, salons and stuff. Those really suffered, given that there was a huge lockdown. Now, how is AI helping here? AI is not helping in this space at this point in time, the way we have built it. It's more closely working on the data analytics side, and the core engineering, data engineering side is where we are collecting all this information. And of course, we have built predictive models to give prediction scores on what products can go well in which region. What we are looking at AI is, our AI division is broken into three parts. One is core NLP, natural language processing. The second one is conversational AI, and the third one is computer vision. So we are looking at NLP and NLP largely to understand preferences of consumers. So we conduct something called a survey, right? We have a lot of surveys which happens, and these are in multilingual. So we are in the process of converting those conversation which happens on audio or on telephonic into English, translate it into English, transcribe it, and then extract information out of that on understanding the preferences, understanding what brand they prefer, why do they prefer CavinKare products. These are the intents are automatically extracted out, and these are like 20 minutes conversation, right? Proud to say that there are very few players in the market who do such kind of work. A 20 minutes conversation in local colloquial languages, translated, transcribed, translated, and then identifying intent and context of this. This information is then fed into the sales team and into the R&D team. That is how we are trying to understand the consumer behavior.
Interesting. Mr. Milind, maybe could you comment on the same question? I'd be happy to also repeat it if you feel you would it would help with to have more color.
Yeah, I think if you can help me with the question again.
So the principle is, see, when you look at FMCG, it's a fairly complex structure, right? Like it's both customer facing on the one side, and it also has multiple players on the other side. So it's not like just it's not a single entity as a manufacturing facility, right? You have a long supply chain leading up to getting the product. So there's a lot of complexity there. So you have inventory management models, you have ERP systems, you have bullwhips effects and things like that on one side, which is a very complex problem. And on the other side, also on the consumer front, there are multiple channels of marketing. There are multiple channels of advertising. There's multiple channels of consumption. So you have the digital consumption, you have the online consumption versus the retail store consumption, and then you have retail vendors. So there are so many pieces in the puzzle along the way. So it might be much simpler in another industry if you are the only player there, right? All the data is with you. Now the data is split across multiple entities. So first of all, do you have the data to make any meaningful contribution? And where do you think AI can play a role in a complex structure like this?
Thank you, Professor, for repeating the questions. Thank you, Kalzoom, for inviting me for these discussions. Look forward for some knowledge gain in these conversations with the industry expert. The question, what Professor you are asking is specific to the FMCG. I'm a part of the FMCG, not a completely FMCG. We are a consumer goods product company. We are the second largest blade manufacturer globally, and we stay focused and serving the economical segment of the market.
Yeah,
we are a Make in India, born in India company with a global footprint. Our major focus is on two sides. One side of the business is manufacturing, and another side of the business is a consumer who is consuming the product, my product. Now, my consumption happen in the two manner. One is B2B, whereby saloons buy my product and they use it for their consumers. Second is the individuals buy my product for the individual consumption. So I have to deal with both kind of customer, and their needs and expectations are quite different. Which is need to be built in during my production side or my manufacturing side. So the integrations between all the puzzles or all the pieces what you have described is very, very important. There is an internal data, there is an external data. The external data is not necessarily from my industry. I have to keep my eyes and ears open for all the industries, because we have seen the side effects of the industry happening on the other industries. So I cannot say that I need to only collect the data for the blade manufacturers.
Yeah.
I also have to collect the data for other industry, which is indirectly influencing my industry.
Yeah.
So there is a huge data available. To make the meaning out of that data, the AI is very, very critical. That brings the predictability in my forecast, my planning, and my budgeting exercise. The major area for me is manufacturing.
Mm.
because being the niche business, there are very, very few handful of manufacturers of the blade globally.
Mm.
So how to improve the OEE, overall effectiveness of my manufacturing, is very critical. How to reduce
Understood.
how to reduce the waste,
Mm-hmm.
so that every metal which is used is
Mm-hmm.
consumed to generate the right number of products, what we call the steel average.
Right.
So for me, AI is helping and should be helping in the both the end of my business.
Mm-hmm.
One is manufacturing, where I have to give the best cost-effective quality product to
Mm-hmm.
remain competitive and stay in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, reaching out to the